Hi friends, I'm Luis Padilla with Fresco Marketing, and today we are at the USHCC National Conference in Kansas City. We're going to have a few special conversations with special guests, and today I'm with Dr. Hayes-Bautista. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for having taking the time. I know you're pretty busy, and I know that you have a session tomorrow, but so. We want to talk and get to know about you and all the important research that you have done. And so can you tell us a little bit, like we were talking about off record, about where you're from and your family?
Okay. Well, yeah, I am a native Angelino, born in Los Angeles. Not a lot of us, but we were there. My family's been there for about 130 years. And so when people ask me, so where are you from? Well, I was born in LA. My parents were born in the US. My mom was born in Arizona. So I am an 8th generation American of Mexican origin.
Okay.
So what does that mean? Okay, it means my family on my father's side, that's the Hayes side, have been in this country for over 300 years. And
wow.
Fought in the American Revolution and all of that. My mom's side comes from, in Mexico, it's called the Pueblo Originario. That is a town that was founded before the coming of the Spanish. And in fact, our particular town, its name was Atlautla, was founded before the Aztecs arrived in Tenochtitlan. It was founded in 1238, still there. And it's got my family history all over it. Now, my mother happened to be born in Arizona, but my family comes from that town. We all have deep roots. So on both sides, we've been in this country for quite a while.
Wow, that's impressive, and it's a very cool thing that I didn't know, like that was a town before the Aztecs, right?
Oh, there were a lot of folks there before the Aztecs.
So
the Aztecs wiped us out, tried to, but that's a whole other history. We beat them finally, along with the Tlaxcaltecans.
Okay.
So we had our Altepetl, there was Atlautla, Chimalhuacan, Tepetlispa, and Ozumba. They were the 4 towns that were part of Altepetl. Okay. And Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz was baptized in Chimalhuacan, and Antonio Alzate from Ozumba.
Oh, wow.
Also called Otzumpan.
Okay. So, and well, I can see that we can talk about history for the whole hour of the 30 minutes of the podcast, but I want to talk about a little bit. Can you tell us about your journey and how do you get involved and how you got interest to start studying the Latino health and the demographics?
Well, it probably began before I even knew I was going to be interested. In that when I started at college in 1963, I was supposed to be studying to become an engineer. My dad was an engineer. So I studied quantitative methods. I did my first program for a computer in 1963 using analog computers, not digital, but analogs. Then later I learned digital, did Fortran and all of that. Now, what was useful out of that, although I'm not an engineer, is I think like an engineer, and I'm very comfortable with large data sets. But then along came the Chicano movement. Jumped in with both feet with the farm workers and Cesar Chavez y todo eso, and got involved doing community organization in East Oakland. I was a student at Berkeley, and we wound up having the idea we were going to set up this health center, a clinic, and we had big ideas, and we were just students. Okay, we were going to bring healthcare services where none existed. We were going to bring them in Spanish, and we were going to bring them for free. And we had $400.
Wow.
Period.
That was it. That was it to start the program.
So we started. And by the way, we succeeded. And 50 years later, La Clínica de la Raza is one of the major healthcare providers in Alameda and Contra Costa County. But here's how I got into what I'm doing. As an engineer, I needed to know, first of all, we're going to build something. So what's the ground we're going to build on? What's the population here? How many Latinos are there in East Oakland? And nobody could tell me. This is 1970, because you didn't have that Hispanic identifier in the census yet. So while Latinos would have answered the census, we didn't know they were Latino. Okay, well, I thought that's pretty bad. Right. We don't know how many Latinos. Okay, so what are the health issues? We don't know. Why? You didn't have a Hispanic identifier on the birth certificate or anything, so we couldn't tell what was Latino infant mortality. Well, as an engineer, I thought, this is crazy. If I were building a house, I just started building a house before I asked what's the ground like, what's the flood situation, the winds of the house would probably fall down. I guess there were so many needs. Whatever we did, we were meeting a need, but I was not happy that we were just kind of guessing. Because I'm an engineer, we don't guess.
Right.
When we're an engineer, we need to know. And if we don't know, we need to know that we don't know so we can figure out what we don't know. So in part, that's why I went into academia. I was recruited for a position at the School of Public Health at UC Berkeley. And I took it because I wanted to spend some time to find out, well, how many Latinos are there in Oakland? And by the way, if I know that, then how many in California, how many in the United States? So I've been researching the health of Latinos ever since. And of course, has led me to look at a lot of different things. Certainly I look at data, and I'm very comfortable looking at mortality records, birth records, census, you name it. But I also bring my lived experience in. So one of the things that I discovered early on is that Latinos have a really unique health profile. Across the country, and as recently as 2022, when we can compare people that died of heart attacks, we can compare Latino to non-Hispanic white. Latinos have 30% fewer heart attacks than whites.
Okay.
Adjusted for age and all, 30% fewer.
30%.
30% fewer deaths due to cancer. 40% fewer deaths due to unintentional injuries. 60% fewer deaths due to chronic lower respiratory. 12% fewer deaths due to stroke. Fewer. That surprises a lot of people because the models say no, Latinos should have more.
Right.
But we have fewer. In fact, as we look at all causes of death, everything, Latinos have about 30% lower deaths than whites, with one exception, which is diabetes. Now, that's the first thing you hear about Latino health is diabetes, diabetes, diabetes.
Yes.
And that's a fairly rare cause of death. It's not in the top 5. It's about number 9. It's far rarer. But that's one thing you hear. How come we have never heard, how come we've never seen a headline, Latinos have 30% fewer heart attacks? I mean, if I found a medicine that could reduce heart attacks by 30%, I'd get the Nobel Prize.
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we hear this? That has to do with racial narratives and research. So I have been looking at that. Latinos have healthier babies. We have lower infant mortality. We smoke less. We drink less. We do drugs less. And this is not the popular stereotype, the drunk Mexican on Saturday night smoking a cigarette.
Right.
But I look at the data. We live 3 years longer. And they're better years.
Bailamos.
Okay.
Gozamos.
Uh-huh. Hay vida en los años.
Yeah.
And this is totally unexpected. That's why it's called a paradox. So how come a bunch of Latinos with less education and less access to care have better health than non-Hispanic whites? Well, it has to do with lifestyle. So there's something in Latino lifestyle that's very health promoting. And we've looked not only at California, we've looked at Illinois, Florida, New York, New Jersey, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, New Mexico. We've looked all around, we see the same pattern. So that's what got me started in health.
Okay.
But along with health, I began to notice other things that I wanted to look at, such as I noticed that Latinos have a really strong work ethic. I wrote a book, it came out about 5 years ago, where I looked at Latinos in California from 1940 to 2015. Now that's 75 years. And for 75 years, Latinos worked harder than non-Hispanic whites, harder than any other group in California, had the highest labor force participation, worked more hours per week, worked more weeks per year. And then I also noticed that Latinos had set up a lot of businesses, that Latinos tended to work more in the private sector. That's the sector that generates wealth that then can be taxed and redistributed. Worked far less in the government sector, used welfare programs far less. And this is not what you hear on the news.
Right.
You hear that Latinos immigrate to get on welfare, you use up all the free healthcare services, just lay around and commit crimes all day. That's not what I see in the data. So that's when I thought I need to be able to communicate this quickly, and that's when I got the idea of estimating the Latino gross domestic product, the Latino GDP. What do Latinos produce, and what is that worth to this country? So we released our most recent national GDP. And if you remember during COVID, Latinos suffered worse from COVID than any other group. But during that same time, our GDP skyrocketed because we stepped up and we continued working while other people stayed at home.
Right.
We grew the food, we processed it, we fed people, we housed people, we built the houses, we transported people, we fixed the cars. I mean, we kept this economy going during COVID. We paid the price. And as a result, our GDP, the worth of all the goods and services that Latinos produced in the U.S. skyrocketed from being at 2.7 trillion in 2019, just before COVID, the 8th largest GDP in the world, skyrocketed to number 5 at 3.7 trillion. We went from number 8 to number 5.
Wow.
Okay, there are only 4 economies bigger than us. We are bigger than India, the economy of India. We are bigger than the United Kingdom. We're bigger than Italy, France. And our growth rate during COVID, I have to remind you, this is during COVID, in the face of COVID, we stepped up, we went to work, and we had the number 1 growth rate in our GDP, faster than China. So that was what we did during COVID. We produced the world's 5th largest economy, bigger than India, growing faster than China.
We work.
We worked, and we kept this country together. And as we go off into the future, this will continue. The Latino workforce grows by about 1 million new workers a year. So this year, about 1 million Latinos that were born back in 2006 turn 18. Mm-hmm. They entered the labor force. Another 1 million were born in 2007, and they will enter the labor force next year. And so on. Every year, 1 million Latinos that were born here turn 18. So our labor force will continue to grow while the labor force of the non-Hispanic whites is actually shrinking. So the math is something like this. For every Latino that ages out of the labor force, 2 young Latinos step in at age 18. Two are refilling the shoes of 1. For every non-Hispanic white that ages out of the labor force, just a little more than a half of 1 steps in. So that labor force is getting smaller.
Okay.
So our labor force is growing. We're getting much higher levels of education than our immigrant parents often had. 90% of Latinos graduate from high school, and you still hear about half dropping out. That is like so 1970.
Right.
And 90% graduate from high school, about half go on to college. They're U.S. citizens, they're bilingual, and they are stepping into their parents' shoes. Oh my God, so this Latino GDP growth is going to continue for the next 20 to 30 years. We are the growth spot for the United States. In fact, these young Latinos are the best chance the United States has of maintaining its economic preeminence throughout the 21st century. We are their future.
We are the future, right?
Yes.
And so yes, and I agree with you. Like a lot of people saying, like now is like, it's not about business. It's like you need to pay attention to the Latino population, right? It's just
I put it like this: you need to pay attention to the world's 5th largest economy that is larger than India and faster than China. And you want to walk away from that?
Exactly.
You're out of the 21st century.
Exactly. It's like it's not now if it's good or bad business. It's about
it is the business.
It is
you
the
want
business.
Growth. And the thing about GDP growth is it's not just for Latinos. Everybody benefits because we drive growth in the U.S. GDP. As the U.S. GDP grows, that means higher wages for everyone, better standards of living, and increased chances for socioeconomic mobility. When GDPs are shrinking, maybe you don't remember the Great Recession of 2008?
Well, I remember, yes.
It was pretty grim. It was very grim. So we want a GDP that grows.
Right.
And of these top 10 GDPs, only 2 have population growth. India, 1 billion people, and the U.S. thanks to Latinos. If it were not for Latinos, the U.S. would have population shrinkage. So we are the future of the U.S. GDP, period. We're talking about, don't do this for Latinos, do this for the future of the U.S. GDP.
Yes.
And who doesn't want GDP growth?
Right. Who doesn't want a healthy economy?
Right.
Right. So, and because you recently did a very interesting research on Latinas too.
Yes.
But before going to talk about that, I want to, like on the research that you did on health, do you know what's the reason why Latinos have or died less from cancer, from heart attacks? It's an ongoing research.
Well, I have a symbol that I use for the reason, because people want to know, why is this?
Yeah.
And up comes a picture of chocolate abuelita. With that picture of abuelita?
Yep.
Okay,
See.
I say abuelita.
No.
Now, actually, that symbolizes a large, what I call the Latino healthy lifestyle. Because it's not because we have high income, because we don't. It's not because we have access to a lot of health care. We don't. Don't get me started on the Latino physician shortage. We just had National Latino Physician Day last Saturday. We need to bring up those numbers.
Yeah.
But something in being Latino, in a lifestyle, is very health promoting. And it doesn't matter whether you're Central American, Mexican, que Cubano, Puerto Riqueño, Sudamericano. I see the same pattern. So it's not just simply the chilitos or frijoles negros or plátanos or whatever. There's something, maybe more than just the food, but maybe how it's eaten, how it's enjoyed. It has to do with networks, family, narrative. How do you find spiritual solace? How do you do recreation? It's some combination of the things. It's how Latinos live that produces this. So it's not a gene, and it's not a specific secret Aztec herb. It's something in this lifestyle that we need to understand, and that could be shared.
Right. Yeah, that can be shared to other cultures and other communities, right? So, yeah, I think the lifestyle of Latinos, and we were talking about enjoying, right?
And that lifestyle not only produces good health, but also produces this fantastic GDP growth. I mean, all my life, people have said, "Oh, you Latinos, you should assimilate. Stop being Latino." And so now I say, "Oh, you want us to be like you. You want us to assimilate. Yes, you must assimilate like us. So you want us to work less. You want us to work fewer hours per week. You want us to work more in government jobs. You want us to use welfare more. You want us to have more heart attacks, more cancers. Want us to die sooner. That's what you want? Oh, no, we don't want that. Oh. So, maybe you should learn what it's like to be Latino. Add 3 years to your life. Help your GDP grow."
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we shouldn't. I mean, hey, we're doing this in English. That's okay.
Right.
After all, we're very much part of a multicultural, multiracial, multilingual background as part of the Viceroyalty of New Spain, El Virreinato de la Nueva España, brought together people from all around the world, from India, from Africa, the Americas, Europe. Hey, we've been doing this for 500 years, not a problem.
Right.
So there's something that we're doing that actually is very, very, very American. As Latinos, we're very American in terms of values and behavior.
Right. Yeah. And so over the years, because you say you started, I mean, you've been researching for many years.
Over 50 now.
Over 50 now. And how do you see that research evolve over the years?
Well, I wrote my first book back in 1980. It was published by Stanford University Press. So it's an academic book, peer-reviewed. And in that book, looking at California, I projected, at that point, California had a Latino population of about 3 million. I projected that by 2030, there would be 14.8 million Latinos in California, and we would be 40% of the state's population. And everybody thought I was crazy. As of now, we are 15.2 million, and we're 6 years early. But I saw this happening, and then I looked at the rest of the country. I saw this huge growth. In 1980, there were only 14 million Latinos in the United States. Now there are 65 million. That's five-fold growth. I saw this coming. So realizing that, I have gotten a lot of negative feedback, because the idea was back in 1980, well, Latinos, you're all a bunch of illegal immigrants, you're gangbangers, you're teenage pregnant moms living on welfare. So you mean to tell me that by California, half of California's population will consist of illegal immigrant, gangbanging teenage pregnant moms on welfare? I don't want that. Well, if that's your narrative, I guess I wouldn't want that too. But the problem is that narrative was not sustained by the data, which has also impelled me to do the research to find out what exactly do Latinos bring. Strong work ethic, very patriotic behavior, very business friendly, very entrepreneur, strong family, good health. That's what it means. So that's been what I've been trying to impart with people, and people still don't want to believe it because they hear this other narrative about Latinos being drunk every Saturday night, going out and having a car wreck and going home, beating up their wife and kids. That's the narrative, not sustained by the data.
Yeah, and so how do you think that we as a community, Latino community, or small business owners, how can we help change that narrative?
By understanding it ourselves. The problem is, I teach one class for pre-medical students, Latino pre-medical students, and these are science students, for Pete's sakes, okay? But they have grown up with this narrative all their life. They come to internalize it. They get on campus at UCLA and they feel out of place. It's a very prestigious campus because UCLA forgot to tell them it was founded by a Latino, but that's a whole other story. But we're giving them that history.
Yeah.
And so they start to believe until they take my class, and I'm a data-based guy. We go through a lot of data, and we talk about quality of data, and they, wow, nobody ever told me this. But that's right, I saw my parents getting up every morning during COVID. They went to work. They didn't get masks. They couldn't go see a doctor. We couldn't find one that spoke Spanish, but they worked. So we start to let them know you can see yourself in our data, that in fact, in the aggregate, these are very, very productive behaviors. And then usually after about halfway through the class, they've been lying to me. Well, I guess they were. Maybe they didn't understand it, but there is a narrative about Latinos out there, but then we have to create our own narrative and then start sharing that. As
Right.
Latinos, we do not own our own narrative of who we are in the United States. And at this conference, I am going to be letting people understand that Latinos have been economically active in what's now the United States. Not just today, not 10 years ago, not 50 years ago, since 1513. We have been economically active for over 500 years in what is now the United States. We're seeing it come to full fruition right now. It has a 500-year history. We didn't all just arrive 30 years ago.
Right. We've been here for
Five centuries.
5 centuries, and like you say, working and like I feel like sometimes our community, we need to take more pride on what we do and show that that we can do good work and good things.
And for me, it's in the data. That's why I like to share the data. And I don't tell people what to believe or what to do. It's just here are the data, and people.
Right.
I figure everyone can grab the data and they can make their own interpretation. But we start seeing the same thing. The narratives we were taught, the narratives I was taught, simply are not sustained by the data. And as an engineer, if the data don't support something, you walk away from it and say, okay, I need a better explanation, or else this house is going to fall down.
Right. And I feel like that narrative is just based on stereotypes, right?
Absolutely, and I can trace it back in California to 1850, the day that California entered the U.S., with this narrative about criminal Latinos that are stealing and robbing and everything else, not sustained by the data.
Right, yeah. So, and like we were talking earlier, you recently did a research on the Latinas.
Yes, the Latina.
Yes.
Okay.
The U.S. Latinas and the impact they have in the economy in the U.S. So please tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, if you remember the way I characterized what the Latino GDP did during COVID
yep.
became the world's 5th largest economy, bigger than India, growing faster than China. Within that, if we look at the Latina contribution, within that rapidly growing GDP, the Latinas actually are outperforming Latino males in every single metric. Higher increase in labor force participation, higher labor force growth, higher wage and salary growth, and everything. Fewer heart attacks, fewer cancers, fewer strokes. Latinas are the impulse behind the skyrocketing Latino GDP, to make it brief. And we can get to a lot of numbers on that, but they are just pushing this even faster, higher, further than it would have absent Latina growth. So within this Latino GDP, Latinas are really pushing that growth to new heights, new levels.
And I can see, I'm based in Kansas City, and I can see here like a lot of new business owners are Latinas, and all of the businesses are owned by Latinas. And what do you think is that? In your research, what's the reason?
Well, there are some we call them secular trends, things that kind of affect everybody, and one of them is, and I see it in medicine, when I was at UCSF Medical Center, when we graduated, the first 12 Latinos there were only 2 Latinas amongst the 12. And it was rare to see a Latina or a female medical student, rare. Since 2005, over half the first-year medical students in this country have been female. So there's a secular trend, of which, of course, Latinos are part of that. But on top of that, you have just the astounding increases in human capital, in education, which even accelerates the secular trend even more for Latinas. So we're going to see this apparent in medical schools, pre-meds, in businesses, law schools, you name it, that Latinas increasingly are going to be represented in fields where Latinos, A, had been shut out, and B, women had been shut out previously.
And so like, and recently on the you say it's 1.3 trillion, right?
Yes, 1.3 trillion is the Latina GDP, bigger than the entire economy of Florida, bigger than Florida.
Wow, and that's just the Latinas.
That's just the Latinas.
Yeah, and I can see like here in Kansas City we have this new group that is Empresarias, it's called, and it's been through the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and it's just in a few months it's more than 200 members, and it's growing.
And there's some history, by the way, behind this.
Okay.
And it has to do with how women were viewed in Iberian law and under British common law. In British common law, and the U.S. law legal system descends from that. Once a woman married, her legal existence was erased. Her husband would do everything for her, take every decision, so that a married woman, could not on her own make a purchase, couldn't sign a document, couldn't make out her will, because her husband was going to do all of that for her. And that really hobbled non-Hispanic white women ability, particularly once they were married, to do business. Under Iberian law, this goes back to the 12th century, and Mexican and Latin American law descends from that. It was totally different, going back to the founding of the Kingdom of Castilla y Aragon, Queen Isabel, King Ferdinand. What's their motto? Monta tanto, tanto mota. Each one puts in, each one takes out. Queen Isabel had her own army, she had her own castle, she had her own economy. She didn't give it to King Ferdinand. So under Iberian law, a married woman owned property independently of the husband. She could buy things, sign documents, make out. Well, she didn't even have to tell her husband. She could do it. So we have had Latinas involved in business since the very get-go. A Latina founded the hospitality industry in Florida in 1590, which she opened up the first hotel, restaurant with laundry. And Latinas owned ranches, owned herds of cattle, sheep, owned silver mines, gold mines, very involved with business, because under Iberian law, married women were able to do that.
Yeah. And also, there's these other cases where I know a few business owners where the husband is supposed to be the owner, but in reality, the wife does a lot of the work, and it's behind all the...
Under British common law, that would be necessary as subterfuge, because it would have been illegal for her to have actually said, I own this business.
Right.
But under Iberian law, and remember, 2/3 of what's now the United States was under Iberian law when we were part of the Viceroyalty of New Spain, El Virreinato de la Nueva España. So from Florida to California, from St. Louis down to Corpus Christi, all that area, for centuries, Latinas were able to operate businesses independently of their husband.
Yeah. And so are you? Is your conference at the USHCC here in National Conference here in Kansas City? Is your conference going to talk about this?
Yes. We will be presenting data from our research that was funded by Bank of America. Bank of America is very interested in Latina entrepreneurship and business ownership. It certainly wants to be able to provide access to capital, because that's what you need to grow a business. And if Latinas have been able to make so much growth, and there are still sometimes obstacles in their path, what Bank of America and others want to do, U.S. Hispanic Chamber, is try to minimize or remove these obstacles, just release the growth potential that is already there.
Right. And what do you see in the future? How do you see like the economy and the Latinos here in the U.S.?
For the Latino economy, about 30 years of growth guaranteed. It's already those babies have already been born.
Right. Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with immigration. I mean, if there is immigration, there would be even more population growth. Who knows what's going to happen? But even if you seal the border, there still already is this growth built in. The babies have already been born. They just start turning 18 every year, and there they go for the next 50 years of their professional life.
Yeah. So it's grow.
For Latinos?
Yes, for
Our
Latinos.
growth. Yeah. And luckily for the U.S., we live here, so that means growth for the U.S.
Yes. And so here in Kansas City and the conference, what do you think is how do you see the role of the Hispanic, the National Hispanic Chamber of Commerce helping small businesses and the role of the economy too? Like, what do you think is the us as small businesses and the chambers across the country need to do to support each other?
Well, there are just the regular chambers of commerce, and as you know, there's sort of a history that why would Latinos feel they need to develop their own chambers of commerce? Like we have the National Hispanic Medical Association. Why? Well, because for about a century, the American Medical Association would not allow black or Mexican doctors to join, so we had to set up our own. Now, of course, the AMA wants Latino physicians and black physicians.
Right.
Well, there has been sort of a resonant situation that Latinos often had to set up organizations on our own. But I think people are beginning to understand if they want a piece of the world's 5th largest economy, bigger than India, growing faster than China, here's the economy you want to start investing in, because you will see the growth as they grow. So it's a matter of removing obstacles. I know some people today say, oh, you shouldn't be talking about diversity. I'm not talking about diversity. I'm talking about the world's 5th largest economy. Again, bigger than India, faster than China. You want a piece of that action, then you better understand Latino business.
Right. And so, because I know that you have limited time here at the conference, but what advice would you give to young Latinos or young professionals, students interested in working with the Latino community?
The most important thing, whether they're going into medicine, business, law, or whatever else, the most important thing they can do as undergraduate students is to develop their unique voice as a Latino. As I point out, and I'll point this out tomorrow in the room, there'll be a few hundred people in the room, a few hundred Latinos. We're all Latino. Yeah. But no two of us are Latino exactly the same way. Each one of us brings our own unique experience. Maybe I don't speak Spanish. Maybe I don't like jalapenos. It doesn't matter. Doesn't mean you're not Latino. We need to understand, who are we? Who am I as an individual? What's my voice? What's my vision? Then communicate in this community of narrative. But each one of us is different. 65.1 million Latinos in the U.S. today. That means there's 65.1 million ways to be Latino. And yet we raise our voice together, and we have produced the world's 5th largest economy. Bigger than India, faster than China. Yeah. We can do wonders by understanding, who am I, who are we? As a community of Latinos in the U.S., let's start to create our own narrative of who we are. We don't need anyone else to tell us who we are or why we are. We are here. Look at the outcome of doing great things. Just own our own narrative. That's the most important thing students can do.
I agree, and I really think that, like we were talking before, like we need to be proud of ourselves, and I'm proud of ourselves and the things that we're doing. And like I'm involved in the marketing industry, and I just see so many times when they try to tell us when they try we're gonna do a campaign for the Latino community, and they think that one thing fits for everybody.
Yeah, just
right?
translate it.
And they will get it.
No, but it's not the way it works. And to do that is not being DEI. It's just being business smart. That's all. Right. It has nothing to do with DEI. It has to do with being business smart. You better know this sector, this market.
Right. You can ignore it.
It's simply good marketing. That's all.
Right.
It's not DEI. It's good marketing, smart marketing.
It's good marketing, and businesses are gonna need our business. Right.
Absolutely. So, and that's not DEI. That's simply business.
Business, right? So because for example, and they need to also understand the difference, right? Like you were talking about, like a Mexicano is not the same as a Cuban or a Brazilian or Colombian. Like also you need to know how to communicate to all the different ways of Latinos.
Absolutely.
So
And it's just good marketing. That's all. Smart marketing.
Smart marketing. Yes.
Not DEI.
No. Is there anything else that you wanna share with us?
Oh, don't ask an academic that. I'll go on for another hour. No, I think this is good.
Yeah?
These are good questions. Thank you very much.
No, I appreciate your time, and once again, we are with Dr. Hayes-Bautista, and you are a professor of medicine and director of the Center of Study of Latino Health and Culture at the School of Medicine at UCLA. And so
the only campus of the university founded by a Latino, Reginaldo Francisco del Valle. Google the name.
Okay. And what year?
He founded the predecessor institution in 1881.
1881, right. So, yeah, well, I appreciate your time, and this is very good information. All this, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And
my pleasure.
And I appreciate your time, and I hope that everybody enjoys the conversation, and we're here at the U.S. National Chamber of Commerce in Kansas City and the National Conference. So thank you for your time, and see you in the next conversation. Thank you.